In this episode of the Get Out and Drive podcast, we've got another crazy story from Travis Bell of Celebrity Machines. Make sure you stay tuned to the very end.
You're listening to the Get Out and Drive podcast with John, Custom Car Nerd Meyer, and Jason, Old Car Guy Carr. We'll be bringing you gearheads everything you never wanted to know about cars and why they should be on the road and not in your garage. Are you ready to get out and drive?
Guys, welcome back to another episode of the Get Out and Drive podcast. My name is Jason, Old Car Guy Carr.
And I am John, Custom Car Nerd Meyer. Now, I know we talked about the General Lee. What were you hinting to what you did this weekend? Or can you not say that yet?
No, I can say now. Couldn't say 4 days ago.
Right.
The hunt for the General Lee also started the hunt for a Bluesmobile, or also started the hunt for original Knight Rider cars, or also started the hunt for, it was all Hollywood star cars for me. And back it through, when Jason and I were growing up, a television star car would generally get more fan mail than the people that drove the car. And the General Lee received more fan mail than any actor on the show. And Warner Brothers would send back a postcard with like a tire track across it as General Lee's autograph back in the day to all the kids that would write in. The finding the Fall Guy trucks and finding this thing. So for some reason, every one of my goofy star cars that I went looking for was a Mopar, and God help me, I've got more money in old Chryslers. I started looking for the Transcon Medi-Vac from the Cannonball run. And I had no idea that the Cannonball run was an actual thing, and the Transcon Medi-Vac was an actual vehicle that raced in the 79 Cannonball run. And then in my hunts and looking, because if you can find the first General Lee, I mean, hell, you can find anything at this point. And a map was just a place to start looking. So I tracked it down to a couple different things and realized kind of what happened to the original Transcon Medi-Vac, and then became friends with Brock Yates. I would call Mr. Yates, and this is, Diamond P Sports, Mr. Yates, Brock Yates, car and driver editor, pit reporter for the 79 Daytona 500, one of the greatest. I mean, he would take my phone calls and he'd be like, "It's the disc jockey." And I'd be like, "Mr. Yates." And, he'd be like, "It's Brock." I'm like, "Oh God, here we go again." But I would pick his brain about the Transcon Medi-Vac, and he had a lot of information on how it was built and who built it and things, because of course he was the co-driver in the 79 Cannonball run with Hal Needham, and his wife Pam was the patient, and Lyle Royer was the doctor. So that was the final Cannonball run that actually happened. But what they did is they handed all the teams these little notepads and said, if anything happens along the way, write it down. So the Hal and Brock took that and turned it into a script, used the same ambulance in which they broke down, and it did not finish for Bert and Dom and Farah and I can't remember his doctor's name, but they all drove in the movie. So in the real 79 Cannonball run, the competitive race, everybody was afraid of the greatest idea in road rally. I mean, because if you show up in a Lamborghini or Ferrari, you're going to get stuck in traffic. You're going to get pulled over. It was always the gimmick that made the Cannonball run versus the speed versus getting there. Because, of course, you got to get from coast to coast. But how you get there is, what do you do when you've done it all? You do Cannonball. So everybody was afraid of their great idea that they had. But they had the most ridiculous setup with a 502 big block Chrysler Mopar, a Dick Landy motor with a quicker transmission, in a van that is less than a year old, that they ordered that color, orange and white, with these two terrible aerodynamic light bars on the roof, and Hellwig sway bars, Bilstein shocks, and just a terrible idea. But it sounded like a Winston Cup car, and everybody got to it, and it was like scared to death, like they're going to put it on us. This is the greatest idea. Needless to say, the 79 Cannonball, it went about 100 feet and broke down. And they ended up breaking into an auto parts store at the Goodwife Shopping Center to get the correct jets for the Holly 850 that they put on it back then.
That's like a bucket with a hole in it.
It was the worst idea. And so they made it to Effingham, Illinois, and then it started spitting transmission fluid to a level that rivaled the Exxon Valdez. And then so they literally had the cover in between the two seats kicked over to the side so they could keep transmission fluid in it down the dipstick hole, and they made it to the Palm Desert, and it caught fire. And so in the Palm Desert is Bell's Truck Stop, or I can't remember. Claude Bell was what it did. Anyhow, has the Tyrannosaurus and it's in Pee Wee's Big Adventure.
Right.
That's a truck stop in the Palm Desert, and that's where the original Transcon Medi-Vac in the 1979 Cannonball died. And it ended up getting towed in from the truck stop there to the Portofino Inn. So in 1979, it had a DNF, but they took everybody's little booklets and turned it into a script, shot the movie in 80, movie came out in 81. It's all these different stories that kind of actually happened with a little comedic twist. The ambulance is shown to break down in the movie, and they're working on it, but it never finished. So for 45 years, the Transcon Medi-Vac has had a DNF. It did not finish. So I took everything that Brock told me, because the original Transcon Medi-Vac had been auctioned off to the NASCAR Women's Wives Auxiliary because Hal Needham owned Harry Gant's Skull Bandit number 33 with Burt Reynolds. And Hal always told me, he said, if you ever want to lose a lot of money, buy a NASCAR team. And so I explained to them that I was rebuilding the Transcon Medi-Vac exactly how they did it, with the 502, the exotic transmission, and a Holley 850. And they both looked at me and said, no, why would you want to do that? Because they realized that everything that they went through, I was about to go through, because that experiment does not work. And especially when you're putting a 502 big block at that little tiny bubble in the front of a 78 B200 Sportsman van. But I did. I had everything that they said that was in the book. And Mr. Yates, and as Mr. Yates, he had Alzheimer's, and I was always afraid to call him because I knew he wasn't well. But I needed to know things like the rear view mirrors, and there were these dinky little rear view mirrors. And I was like, Mr. Yates, I'd call him, it's the disc jockey. And I'm like, the two mirrors on the side, I've been chasing these mirrors down for 8 months. He goes, 1974 Opel Manta GTs. Okay. And I'm like, Mr. Yates, you're not well. I mean, your caretakers would have me send photos in for him to Alzheimer's is terrible. And, but he would remember those things, and they would love it when I would call and talk to him. And so he was right. But there were 1974 Opel Manta 400 GT mirrors, and I have no idea why they're on the ambulance, but they're on my ambulance. So we to the letter built the van exactly like they built it, and it did not work. And we had heating problems, and the Holley 850 is horrible. And Dick Landy, it was not good. So I've had the van now for 20 years, and we tried 2 years ago because everybody was doing Cannonball COVID runs because there's nobody on the road, man. I mean, it was so rad. You could get out and be 3-lane it, woo, everybody get off the road.
Oh God. And
the Cannonball run record fell 6 times in 2 months. Wow. And the current record is 25 hours and 39 minutes from New York, from the Red Ball Garage to the Portofino Inn.
Okay.
And in 79, they moved the starting line to the Good Wife Shopping Center in Darien, Connecticut, because the only reason why they ever started at the Red Ball is that's where all of car and drivers test vehicles would stay. And when they found out that they were going to do another Cannonball run in 79, you had all the photographers and everything waiting at the Red Ball when everybody's up in Darien, Connecticut, getting ready to start this race. So a little shuck and jive, it's whatever. So the ambulance has never finished. And for me, I've always been a failure with the thing because it either never finished or it never started, because sometimes it won't get its way out of the driveway. So we had to step back and be like, all right, we need to fuel inject this thing. And we had Phytech come on for an attempt that Ed Bolian from VinWiki, myself and John Ficar from Ficar Classics, we tried about 2 years ago, and we left the Red Ball Garage in the ambulance, made it through New Jersey, and it made it to Pennsylvania and broke down. And so it has had this never ending thing. And so we had the 2904. It didn't make it to the starting line. It had the C2C Express. I've left Ed Bolian in New York without a ride 2 times now. So I was invited to do the Southern Classic, and it is a competitive Cannonball run. And that was this last weekend. And that's why I'm able to chat about this thing, because the Cannonballers are like Fight Club. I mean, they are the best people, and they do not talk. They keep their mouth shut, and they will say, I would be like, "Hey, John, do you want to get breakfast in New York tomorrow?" And then you would say, as long as we get dinner in LA.
Right.
And so that means, we're going on a Cannonball. So Taylor Hall, which is a drifter, he's in Formula D. He's incredible. He has a drift Cadillac, which is incredible. He puts on a thing every year. It's his 5th year, called the Southern Classic. And the Southern Classic is the Smokey and the Bandit run. And so in the movie Smokey and the Bandit, they leave from Lakewood Fairgrounds, which is no longer there. It was Hi-Fi Buys Arena, and now it's called something else. But, remember Big Enos and Little Enos their driver's about to win the Southern Classic, and the Southern Classic is at Lakewood Fairgrounds. And they go to Texarkana, Texas, and they get Coors beer, and then they run back to the Lakewood Fairgrounds. They're supposed to do it in 28 hours. And so I was invited to bring the ambulance to a competitive Cannonball event with all the Cannonballers, and to finally try to see. And I'm like, there ain't no way. But for the last year, Jared Pink, who used to be on Wrench Every Day, and now he has his own channel. He's always had his own channel, but it's been changed to the Questionable Garage. Just this big 6'7" hulk of a man that has more knowledge about everything that makes a vehicle run than I have ever learned. So a year ago, we had a dinner at Ed's house, and he was my +1. Jared was. So I'm 6'4", he's 6'7". We looked like these two big goofy guys. Well, Ed's 6'7". So I said, hey, if we ever, I want to try and get this Phytech off of here. And I approached Scott Kirk at Holly, and Holly was really hoping that we would not complete the Cannonball run on someone else's inferior product, because they wanted to right the wrongs of 1979 with the Holly 850 that was on it. So they came on full board with the ambulance with Holly Sniper fuel injection, and said, look, if anybody can complete one of these things, we can. And Mr. Pink, I dropped the ambulance off at his place in Cleveland, Georgia. So for 11 months, he worked on it, and it went to Holly Mo Party and things like that, and tinkered with it and to get it to where he thought it would go. And it was a snowstorm last Wednesday in Indianapolis. Like, I was literally going to back out last Wednesday. And I said, Mr. Pink, do you think this thing will do it? And he said, there's only one way to find out. So it is 1,374 miles from Lakewood Fairgrounds to Texarkana, Texas, and then back to Lakewood. And so you have to drive there as fast as you can, and teams are released every 10 minutes. And you have to go there. But you remember, you have blue laws in Texas. They don't serve alcohol till 7 a.m. So you always want to kind of get your start time, and so you don't get there and have to wait for beer, which is ridiculous, because then you're just adding time. So we left, myself, Ed Bullion, and Matt Begley from Octane Addicts. He's Rob Pitts' former cameraman, and we needed somebody to document this mess in case that we broke down, or in case it actually made it, which has never made it in 45 years. So we like Lee One started all this stuff, finding Lee One, and now owning the ambulance for the Cannonball Run. And when we fired it up, it was a completely different ambulance. Like, and still has the big block 502, has a gear vendor's transmission, 4-wheel disc brakes, Hellwig sway bars, Bilstein shocks, ridiculous, but it's still a brick with 2 sails on the roof of it. And it still drives horrible, and still has a horrific driving position. And at 11:40, Ed Bullion jumped out of the passenger seat, clocked in at Lakewood Fairgrounds, and we're gone. So we're going as fast as the mighty ambulance would get there. At 21 minutes after 7 a.m., we arrive at the Paradise Truck Stop in Texarkana, Texas. So it made it to Texas. And we get our beer. You have to get your beer and your receipt from that. You got your beer at the Paradise, get back in the ambulance, and turn around and start screaming back toward Atlanta. And it was on rails. Like, it has never been this fun to drive. I've always had a hate relationship with this vehicle. And we get to about 40 miles outside of Birmingham, and you can hear a little valve clatter because it's right there next to your knee. But every time we go up a hill, I'm like, man, the oil's going to the back end of the pan. Maybe we should stop and we've been hammering this thing for 1,000 miles at 85 to 100 miles an hour, no matter what. So we pull in, and at this mom and pop truck stop, long story short, lift up the hood, and things have changed since the last time I looked at it, because all the Holly stuff's on it. And we used to have like this little ski ramp tube that would put oil in the trans or into the engine. So I pull the stick and I'm like, holy crap. I mean, we don't have any oil in this thing right now. So I, put the little dipstick in it or put the funnel in and start I put 1 quart in, 2 quarts in. I pulled it again and I go, man, this thing ain't got nothing on the damn stick. I go, how low is this thing? And I read it. And as I'm putting it back in, it says Dextron. So I just put 2 quarts of oil in the transmission.
Whoops.
So we are 160 miles away from breaking the curse of the Cannonball run, from breaking the curse of the Transcon Medi-Vac. And I've just put 2 quarts of VR zinc oil, Valvoline racing zinc, into the trans. And I called Jared and he goes, oh, where you at? Where you at? How are you doing? How are you doing? I said, if I put a quart of oil in the transmission, because things look different to me now than what I'm used to, because he's done such a terrific job on this thing. I said, is that bad? He said, we can run it through. We'll fly. We'll get it. Well, it may tear up some clutches, whatever. We'll fix it. I said, what happens if I put 2 quarts in? And he says, have you started it? I said, no. He said, then all your oil is still in your pan. He said, and you have a deep well pan on that thing. He said, drain it right where you sit. And so I ran in the truck stop. I said, anybody got a drain pan? And this is a mom and pop truck stop. No, I said, kitty litter. I mean, anything, because I'm at one of the pumps, gas pumps. And no, everybody looking at me like I'm crazy. And I go, Polar Pop cups, like, give me anything. So we have like 20 of these Polar Pop cups, right? And Matt Begley, I'm wearing all white because I'm in the ambulance outfit. Ed's all white. Begley's got black on. I'm like, get under there, pull the drain plug because it's a deep sump pan. And I said, if we can get the fluid out of here, the oil is sitting on top. You'll see it. It looked like an oil slick on top. And he pulled it, and it's nice and warm, but not like scorching hot. And it's coming out like water, like you can't keep up with it. So there's one photo out there that'll probably be released that there's an absolute ecological disaster about 60 miles outside of Birmingham because once we put about 2 Polar Pop cups worth and we just let it ride. So there was 6 quarts of transmission fluid and 2 quarts of oil underneath the ambulance. And just Begley come back up, put the thing in, he says, start putting trans fluid in it. So we put 6 quarts in it. I put 3 quarts in the oil where we were supposed to put it in it. And I walked back in and I looked at the folks. I go, kitty litter. I mean, like this, the spill underneath this thing is the size of 2 refrigerators. And I looked at them and they looked at me like, no. And I go, if you had a diesel spill at one of the diesel pumps, what would you do? Do you have a diesel spill kit? And they're like, we don't know what you're talking about. And I looked at Ed, I go, dude, we tried. So fired it back up, fuel, oil pressure, everything. I backed up away from the ecological disaster that I left at some pump. Because some mom is stopping there and some kids get out with his new shoes and just went ass over tits and landed on, because it was just a mess, right? Just terrible. And so the last 160 miles, I drove it as hard as it would go. And we got off at the 75. So we're 2 miles away. We're about to break the curse of the Transcon Medi-Vac in a competitive Cannonball event. People have tried solo. That's not a Cannonball event, competitive Cannonball event. So we get off at the 75 split there at the north and south. First exit's Lakewood Fairgrounds. Come down to the stoplight, and I'm like sitting there like going like, and it's kind of just a little pissing and popping, but it's a little mad. But and I'm like, why the hell isn't anybody going? Like, it's green. Like, let's. And here comes a real ambulance through the damn stoplight at the same time. And so, but it's going my direction. So the car goes in front of me. I turn right and I will full code my ambulance following his ambulance, whoever's ambulance that was. And we had 2 miles to go on a 2-lane road, and about 3/4 of a mile into that run to the fairgrounds, the ambulance turned off. And I just lit it up and lights and sirens and blew multiple stop signs at ridiculous miles an hour. And there was a downhill run into the fairgrounds, and I knew we were coasting at that point. And we pulled in, and Ed jumped out of the out of the back end because Matt was filming everything. and out of the sliding door, clocked in. And the current Cannonball run record holder, one of them is Doug Tabbitt. It's Arnie Toman and Doug Tabbitt. They did the 25:39. And Doug was filming, and he walked around. He said, "Travis, how does it feel to finally break the curse?" And I was a crying disaster. And I'm pretty tough right now. It was bad, but it was
wow.
It was tough, but the generally stuff all led into looking for star cars. And the whole reason why I was down near Lumpkin Campground Road again, because we had our award ceremony at AMP, Atlanta Motorsports Park. I had driven by Mr. Shaw's place again, and I haven't been there in 20 plus years, and it's completely different now. So yes, last weekend, I'm hunched over because it was the worst driving position ever. But I've been trying for 20 years to break the curse. I promised Brock Gates that I would break it, and we broke it. So I don't know now with it if we're going to, because right now I'm driving Brock and Hal's ambulance, and it's never been my ambulance. So it's probably time to modern Hemi this thing, because we got 6 miles to the gallon. We had to stop 7 times. If you include the initial fill up, we stopped 8 times to do 1,374 miles. And so it's probably time to, keep it Mopar, but get a modern cop car with a Eagle heads on it and just a modern Hemi. So, but yeah, the General Lee turned into that. I've driven the Bluesmobile through the mall. I mean, we've done a lot of stuff with old Chryslers and old Hollywood Star Cars. And like I said, if we would have not, as we originally talked, been kind of sat on my hands and been like, there's so many hurdles. Where do you even start? Wait. If I want to find Daisy cheap, where do I begin? It's probably gone by now. If we would have had that mindset to begin with, the car would have been crushed and gone by now.
So Travis, if people want to listen to more Travis Bell stories, tell us how they can find you on social media.
Well, hopefully we'll be back on the Get Out and Drive podcast. Well, if you guys are sick or not listening to me talk about all of my goofy adventures, but of course, I'm Retro Disc Jockey on Instagram. And then I own a company called Celebrity Machines. So every Hollywood Star Car license plate, from Back to the Future to Ghostbusters to movies that aren't even out yet, like the new Transformers and things like that, we do the plates for. We also do the plates for movies or shows like The Mayor of Kingstown, that's on Paramount, and things like that. So we produce all metal stamped Hollywood license plates. And then, of course, having a goofy friend named Ed Bullion, who is probably one of the greatest people that I've ever met in my lifetime, and just made all his own luck. He's terrific. He owns VinWiki, and which turned from an app into a YouTube channel. And the app is still very, very neat. You can find the history of your own car and or someone else's car. And you'll hear me jab it on there about the one that got away or something like that. And I'm kind of the one that generally grounds the channel, because there's some pretty interesting people on there with vehicles that I would never be able to afford. But then I will say, I'm really upset that my Geo Tracker got away or something. So, and then of course, if you guys have me back, we'll find some more ridiculous stuff to get after.
Oh, we have to. We'll keep in touch, and we'll get you on the schedule, and maybe you'll find some other ridiculous things. Awesome.
We have a go-kart race in my backyard in April. It's called the Backyard 400. I have a 1/3 paved road course in my backyard, and all the go-karts have to look like Shriner carts. They all have to have a body on them, and they can't be more than 6.5 or 212. So, and every year the winner of the Backyard 400 wins a 1989 Chevy Cavalier convertible, C24. So we gave one away last year. We have this year's ready to go. The night before is the UAS Nationals, and that's the same go-kart that you have to race the day after in the Backyard 400. We had Ben come over from New Zealand to drive last year. We have Sam Hard coming from the UK to drive this year. And then, of course, Jared Pink is a 6'7" man that's going to drive in the go-kart race too.
Any Canadians in that race yet?
Not yet. If you're ready to come over, I mean, you can be the first to plant the flag of Canada and the winner's circle of the Backyard 400. So that's mid-April. You'll find information on that on Facebook, and it is absolutely ridiculous. People camp. It's like Talladega, and it's just the greatest thing. And my neighbor is the pace kart driver. Like it is absolutely fun. So,
Jason, do they sell go-karts on racingjunk.com?
They may
'Cause
sell
I
racing.
I think I'm leaving. Travis, it's been great talking to you. I think I'm going to go over to Racing Junk and try and find me a go-kart and jam the get out and drive go-kart together and head over to Travis's place.
Love to see you. Jason, you got to find him a cart, but it's got to be a Shriner cart. It's going to have a body on it. So
there you go. Well, fantastic having you on here, and stay in touch.
Cruise on over to our website, getoutanddrive.com, for all the info you never wanted to know about our podcast. Hit us up on our listener hotline, be the first to know what's happening, get industry news, and grab your Get Out and Drive merch. Connect with us on social media. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Follow us on Twitter at Get Out and Drive Pod.
what drives you?